virtual due to this coronavirus, and it appears all the members are present at the moment. Can I request them to introduce themselves, please? Should we start, Marilyn? And
yes, thank you, Chair. I'm Councillor Marilyn Ashton. I am the Conservative spokesman on this committee.
Anjana?
Councillor Anjana Patel, I'm a member of this committee.
Chris?
Councillor Christopher Baxter, I'm a member of the Planning Committee.
Simon?
Hi, I'm Simon Brown.
Sachin? Is there?
Councillor Sachin Shah, member of the Planning Committee.
Kiran?
Councillor Kiran Ramchandani, reserving for Keith Ferry.
Yes, I'm Councillor Ali. I'm chairing the meeting because Keith Ferry, the chair, is busy with. As members are aware that there are protocols on the meeting, I think we should keep our videos on and keep ourselves mute unless you're going to speak. And in the case of technical problems, the meeting will be adjourned until the problem is resolved. If the member loses the connection, meeting will be adjourned until reconnected. If the technical problem persists, then the meeting will be abandoned to a later date. When voting members to state, I have heard the discussion and I vote to grant or refuse the application. We have to go by our device clock, and as the members are aware that this meeting is being video and audio recorded and will be available to watch and listen on the website. And I got reserve member Kiran. You're reserving for Key, is it?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, thank you. And any members to speak? Want to speak? Any right to speak? Any of the members? No?
You mean backbenchers? I don't think there are.
Yes, I don't think so. I got any in there. Just
okay.
Yeah. And declaration of interest? No. And we come to the minutes of the meeting held on 23rd of September. Everybody agree on those minutes?
Agreed, Chair.
Thank you.
Agreed.
We got public questions, none notified, petitions, none notified, deputation, not notified, reference from the council and the other committees, none notified. And then next to addendum, we got, I think, 1 or 2 addendum. You accept those? Thank you.
Yeah. Agreed, Chair.
Yeah. Now we can start on the councillors' officers. So Beverly, we have to start from bonus lane. I think you want to withdraw it.
If I might do on item 101 1628 Bonusfield Lane, we've had a question raised today in relation to the affordable housing. Officers need to look into that question, and we are therefore requesting that the item is deferred until the November committee so we can look into that question and provide the answer to the committee accordingly. So I'm asking members if they will defer that item until November, please.
Can I just ask a question, please?
The question really was looking at the viability and to see whether there was any scope for any contribution to be made either on site or in lieu of on site provision. We don't have that answer, so we need to go back and explore that.
Yes, I think the question was raised by Sachin, I think, during the briefing. That's the one, isn't it?
Maybe, but I just, if I may have a supplemental question, Chair. So yeah, that's fine. No problem deferring it, and you want to get it right. If that's quite right. But we were given to understand that the officers were doing, and I have seen the supplemental addendum, so I've got an idea what the problem is actually. So are you saying that you haven't quite got it right in terms of the assessment or calculation you've made? I just need to understand, that's all.
No,
It's clearer.
That's not the case. Officers, we have had the independent review and officers are satisfied with the outcome of that review. However, an element has been questioned and I need to go back and to double check that with the applicant. I haven't had the opportunity to do that, and that's why I'm asking members for the deferral. What
element was that then?
It was just whether there was scope, whether there can't be on-site provision, whether there was any flexibility there for a contribution in lieu.
Planning game, yeah. Okay, I get it. All right. Thank you.
Okay, members agree on this one? Defer the meeting?
Agreed.
Thank you, Beverly, so we can defer it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next one is 102. Northside Car Park, Green Hill Way. Alina.
Yeah, good evening, members. This does relate to Northside Car Park on Green Hill Way. There is one addendum item associated with the application to propose the inclusion of a permit restriction obligation to safeguard against any parking stress on the surrounding controlled parking zone and secured by Section 106 legal agreement. The application site comprises an existing vacant site which was formerly used as a pay and display car park accommodating 42 car parking spaces, and the site is located within the Harrow Town Centre and forms part of Opportunity Site 12 in the Harrow and Wealdstone Area Action Plan. The northern boundary of the site backs onto the rear gardens of the two-storey terrace houses on Fairholme Road, and the western boundary comprises the elevations of two-storey semi-detached dwellings on Green Hill Road. On the eastern side, there's a Travel Lodge Hotel, and fronting that, there's the council-owned car park, and to the rear of Debenhams, as you can see in this picture here, just to provide some context. The proposal seeks the redevelopment to create a Part 3, 4 and 5-storey building to provide 89 co-living units for communal facilities. By way of context, there is an extant permission at the site for 42 units under planning reference P5545/15. Due to recent changes in the legislation under the Business and Planning Act 2020, the implementation of this permission has been extended to the 1st of May 2021, and therefore the site benefits from this fallback position. If you have a look at the comparison between the approved and the proposed schemes in terms of the external appearance, scale, mass and footprint, the stepped articulation which addresses the curvature of the road and the overall design largely remains the same as that already approved under the extant permission. In terms of the principle, the site is an allocated site, and the site allocation seeks two leading land uses comprising C3 residential and C1 hotel. It is noted that the proposed use, when assessed strictly in accordance with the draft London plan, would not be C3 residential use, rather it would represent a sui generis use. However, in line with policy H1 of the draft London plan, 89 co-living units would equate to 49 net additional units, which would provide a net contribution towards the borough's housing stock within a building of an appropriate scale. Furthermore, the principle of co-living units are supported by policy H16 of the draft London plan. Therefore, the principle is acceptable. In terms of character and appearance, the proposed building is largely the same as that approved and which could be implemented under the previous application for 42 units. The main difference relates to the inclusion of a single-storey reception area to the front and a modest glazed conservatory at 4th floor level. The proposed building would be of high quality architectural design, and the approved scheme was also shortlisted in the Housing Design Awards in 2016. The proposed development would not have a detrimental impact to the residential amenity as it would be sufficiently contained within the site. The previous approved design strived to ensure no detrimental harm would arise to neighbouring occupiers, and as such the current scheme proposes no additional harm than that was already approved. A suitable standard of residential accommodation would also be provided for future residents with regards to internal layout, outlook, privacy and the provision of internal and external communal areas. In terms of affordable housing, the council's external consultant has advised that the scheme is unable to support any affordable housing contribution, and a calculation based on the GLA's late stage review formula, which accounted for rental growth and the build cost inflation, confirmed that a late stage review would not be able to capture any contribution. However, the applicant's viability consultant and the council's external consultant have used the approach undertaken at Palmerston Road and Lowlands Road to agree a contribution of £393,647 on a pro rata basis. The proposal financial offer would assist in the council's delivery of affordable housing within the borough, and given that it is unlikely that a late stage review would be able to capture any further contribution made, it is considered acceptable. In terms of highway, due to the high transport accessibility and the site being located within a CPZ, in order to encourage modal shift and minimise the impact of overspill parking on the surrounding highway network, the developer is required to enter into a legal agreement to restrict future residents from obtaining parking permits. The provision of 3 blue badge spaces are also proposed in the front in line with draft London Plan policy. The proposal is therefore recommended for approval, subject to conditions and a Section 106 agreement. Thank you.
Chair, you're on mute, I think.
Yes, Marlene, you got a question, please? You're mute, Marlene.
Contagious, isn't it, Chair? So
No, you-
sorry. I'm not mute now. Okay. I'm very pleased that the officers took up the point that Councillor I raised at the briefing in respect of resident permit restricted, because that was not something that had been agreed. So that is a good move. Although we still want a little bit more information about how car-free developments fare, but I think that's maybe for another discussion on another day. As regards this development, I am obviously disappointed because I'm not convinced that the co-living model will necessarily end up being as advantageous to this borough as perhaps other people might expect it to be. I think a phrase used previously was high class HMO, which I'm afraid it might be the case. But I'm willing to accept, obviously, that there is an extant permission for the actual built environment. And so there's very little that, as far as I'm concerned, that I can do about this, other than to say that, suffice it to say, I'm not a big fan. I think it's a pity that it didn't remain as a normal C3 use of 40 plus self-contained normal flatted development units. And I hope I'm wrong and that this turns out to be a big success. I've got my doubts, Chair. Thank you.
Any other question? Selena, can you stop the presentation so we can see everybody on the screen? Yes, yes. Any other questions? Yeah, Anjana, yep.
Some of my concerns has already been asked, which I did ask during the briefing of any successful schemes which we have. We have been giving planning permission on car-free development. Many schemes has been passed, developed, but we still have to wait and see how successful they are. So that's already been asked. I would just say, as the Marilyn has already said about the development, I'm actually not convinced at the moment that this is a right type of development that we should be encouraging in this borough. because as I said last time as well, it is kind of a high-class HMO and not an affordable accommodation that somebody else suggested. So, and it is obviously this will be an expensive accommodation to be living in as well. And we don't have anything to fall back on or to look at to see how successful this kind of development has been, especially in Harrow, because it's new. I think this is a second or third one that we are encouraging to have. But I have got no idea where this kind of development has been successful. And I think it is important that I know about it. I would be only convinced when I see something which is happening successfully. But I'm not really happy with this kind of development. As I said before, it is to me a high-class HMO. Thank you.
Any other questions? No, can we go on to the vote? So Marlene, so yeah, Sachin, yeah, thank you.
Sorry, thank you, Chair. Just on that point around how we've approved other, there probably is a limit to co-living in Harrow. I don't think we're there yet. So on that basis, I think, you know, I'd support it. There is a payment of off-site contribution to affordable. I think, you know, as much as I would like that to be higher, it is broadly similar given the slightly smaller scale to the one we approved last month. So given I agreed with that, I don't think I could argue that is too low. And then the point made by Councillor Patel about it being a high-class HMO. Well, if the choice is between a high-class HMO and a low-class HMO, then we should have a high-class HMO. So this does help reduce the number of family homes that would otherwise turn to HMOs. So having it high-class is actually a good thing. I think it was treated as a negative, but I think having high-class things are a positive to the borough. So I'll be supporting the application.
Thank you, Sachin. Any other questions or comments? No?
Yeah, as I was named by Councillor Shah that he would prefer a high class and a low class HMO. I was talking about affordability, and when you have high class HMO like a hotel style, it is not affordable. That's where I was getting at, not high class and low class in that manner. Just to clarify my point. Thank you.
Okay. Can we go on to the vote? Yeah. Hi, Chris. Yeah. Thank you, Christopher. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just wondering if I could have a bit more information about the history of the site, because I noticed from the documents that over the last decade there have been other applications that have been approved on the site, and then applications to extend the extension of the time for those applications, which have then been refused. So I was just, if there's any more information the officers could give about what has been granted and then not built.
Yeah, I mean, there was an application in 2008 for 37 flats that also got permission but has not been implemented, and for whatever reason. And then subsequent to that, there were two other applications. There was another one in 2011, granted in 2012. Again, that one was refused, and they were refused on the reasons for substandard accommodation. And then in 2013, there were two other applications which were also refused, and those were both dismissed at appeal. So after that, it was the 42-unit scheme, which was then approved. So that's generally what the history is. I'm not sure why the application in 2008 was never implemented. However, that's all the information that I have.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Selena. Yeah. Can we go on to vote? Yes, Marlene. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, sorry, Chair. It's not as if we've got a very big agenda tonight, so please forgive me. I think I'd just like to reiterate the point that the site is developable, and there is nothing wrong at all, in my view, with the extant permission. It's not bad design. and so on. The problem is the reservation that I have, and I think Angela has as well, Councillor Patel has, about the type of use that this is. I was very heartened to hear Sachin, Councillor Shah say that maybe we had reached some sort of limit on these co-living experiments. I'm not a big fan of experiments because the problem is when you do this and it doesn't work out, you end up with a real problem. You know, there are other things that councils do, like get the bins emptied, put in lights and things, and if it's not quite right, you can change it a bit. But if you establish a principle like this, it's a bit of an indelible ink, really. And I'm really worried that if it's not successful as a high-class HMO, i.e. a co-living establishment, it might end up as what we all don't want, is a very large 89 bed or 89 people low-class HMO, which is something I don't think will, especially given that it's rather an elegantly designed building. I think it's rather a pity to do that. And, you know, that won't do anything to regenerate and help improve the lot of our metropolitan town centre, which is only barely hanging on to its designation as it is. So that's the reservation. But having said that, it doesn't warrant a proposal for refusal. It's just that I'm not happy with it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Can we go on to the vote now? Marlene, you still have got a question or got your hand? No, okay, thank you. Yes, sir. Please, I mean, it's can we go on to the vote and motion to grant approval? In favors? I start with myself. I've heard all the proceeding and discussions, and I vote to grant the application. Sachin?
Councillor Sachin Shah, I've heard all the proceedings and I vote to grant.
Simon?
Councillor Simon Brown, I've heard all the discussions and I vote to grant.
Kiran?
Councillor Kiran Ramchandani, I've heard the discussions and I vote to grant the application.
Marlene?
I've heard all the discussions and I vote to abstain.
Anjana?
Councillor Anjana Patel, I've heard all the discussion and I vote to abstain. Thank you.
Christopher?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Christopher Baxter, I've heard all the proceedings and I vote to abstain.
Thank you. The application is granted. 4 in favour and 3 absentees. Thank you. Can we go on to the next one now?
Abstain, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Next one, 201 now, please. It's Kat.
Okay, you see the presentation? Right. Item 201 is Valleyfield. The site is a large locally listed property within the Mount Park Road Conservation Area and the Harrow Hill Area Special Character. The proposal is to demolish an existing 2-storey side extension and single-storey extensions to the existing garage to form a 5-bedroom and attached dwelling house. The principle of development is considered to be acceptable as it would not constitute garden land. And the proposal would have an acceptable impact on conservation area and air special character. The recommendation, the committee is asked to grant permission subject to conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Katrina. Any questions? Thanks, Marlene. Yeah.
Yes, perhaps switch off the presentation. Well, case officer, but we have seen it. Thank you. Best
Thank
luck.
you.
Yeah, I'm the guilty party for calling this in. And yeah, it is because it is an extremely important conservation area, actually, and an area of special character. And funnily enough, although it doesn't appear on the actual documentation, I actually received quite a lot of letters about it, which made me think that perhaps it was more contentious than one might have assumed. One of the neighbours wrote that the second floor window may overlook one Oakley Grange, and that they would appreciate that window being obscure glazed and resiting. I don't think that's happened. There was concerns about the siting of the bin closure, which I don't think has been changed. They actually were keen that the wooden boundary fence be extended to improve privacy. And the Residents Association around there wrote to me and said that they would prefer it if there could be a gap between the main house and the new house, and there isn't. So it's not a disaster, but I think it merited a review, and I don't take issue with it particularly, I have to say, but I think it's a pity that none of the issues that have been raised have actually been addressed, unless I've got that wrong, but I don't think they have. You know, I think it actually will probably turn out to be quite nice, but it's not ideal. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? No? Can we go straight to the vote then? I'll start myself. Councillor Ali, I have heard all the discussions and vote to grant the application. Thank you. Simon?
Councillor Simon Brown, I've heard the discussions and vote to grant.
Sachin?
Councillor Sachin Shah, I've heard all the discussions and I vote to grant.
Kiran?
Councillor Kiran Ramchandani, I've heard all the discussions and I vote to grant.
Merlin?
Councillor Marianne Ashton, I've heard all the discussions and I vote to grant.
Christopher?
Councillor Christopher Baxter, I've heard all the proceedings and I vote to grant.
And Jenna?
Councillor Anjana Patel, I've heard all the discussion and I vote to grant. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Please, the application is granted unanimously. Thank you. The next one is 202-115 Village Way, Reynolds Lane. Who is going to present it?
Gonna present.
Shamal is there, is it?
Can you guys see my screen?
Yeah, we can see the screen. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Okay. So the application site comprises of a two-story semi-detached dwelling house located on the southern side of Village Way. The site is adjoined by one neighbouring property, which is number 113 Village Way, which is located to the east. The site is adjoined to the rear by allotment gardens and is adjoined to the west by the Yedding Brook Sink. The site has a PTAL rating of 3 and it is located in a fluvial flood zone 2 and 3. These are some photos of the site, the rear garden, and the rear of the neighboring property, which is number 113. These are elevations, existing and proposed elevations. The application proposes the conversion of a garage to a habitable room, the demolition of the rear conservatory to make way for a two-story rear extension, the addition of stairs to the rear elevation to access the rear garden, and the application proposes the conversion of the subject dwelling to 2 two-bedroom flats. This is the existing and proposed floor plans and the proposed site layout. The bins would be located within the forecourt. There will be car parking spaces provided in the front, as well as soft and hard landscaping. The existing rear garden would be subdivided into 2, and cycle storage would be provided in the rear garden for each flat. Sorry. The proposed units would provide an increase in the smaller housing stock within the Borough of Harrow, thereby complying with the housing growth objectives and policies of the Harrow Development Plan. The proposal would have an acceptable impact on the character and appearance of the area and would result in an acceptable impact on the residential amenity of the neighbouring dwelling, number 113 Village Way. There would be an adequate provision of amenity space for future occupiers in line with the London space standards, and there would be off-street car parking spaces provided. The Highways Department had no objections to this. The development will have an acceptable impact on the flood risk and biodiversity of the area. It would be subject to pre-commencement conditions for further details to be provided to protect the biodiversity and to manage the resilience of flood risk. 2 objections were raised following public consultation. The planning committee is asked to grant planning permission subject to conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Shamal. Any questions, colleagues? No questions, so we can go. Yes, Marilyn, thank you.
Thank you. I actually brought this to the committee because I was slightly concerned about it, and I wasn't clear as to how it had been improved from the previous proposal. And I don't think Shamal, who's always extremely nice to me and patient, is to blame for that. It's just that I just couldn't quite understand what exactly had been changed. But clearly this is more room because it is, unless I've got this wrong, now 2-bedroom, two 2-bedroom flats and not 3 bedrooms. So, you know, there's a bit more room, and I think that helps. And also there had to be a lot more information given about the flooding issues in the locality. What I would say about this, and anyone who knows me from years ago and even now, I am not in all circumstances a big fan of converting particularly these sort of houses into flats. I understand that it does help us with our choice of housing stock, and I appreciate that completely. But in this particular case, I don't actually. I'm not exactly very happy about it. I think it's a pity to do this. Having said that, and having studied the report in a way that wouldn't have been possible unless it had come to the committee for a review, which is what we're here for. Bearing in mind the length of the agenda tonight and the fact that one item has been deferred, luckily we've got time tonight to have a proper look at this. I'm satisfied that it is, or rather I'm not, I don't think they're sustainable now. It's sustainable grounds for refusal, whereas before there were 7 reasons for refusal. Having said that, I think it's a pity. I think it would have been so much better if this hadn't happened. And to say that I'm not particularly enthusiastic about it is an understatement. But I'm afraid there isn't, in my view, much chance of us winning an appeal, unfortunately, in this case. And therefore, I'm not going to propose refusal. Thank you.
Christopher, you got Christopher or Anjana who wants to go first? Anjana, you go first.
Thank you, Chair. I am actually looking at this application where obviously residents are concerned about the flood area, and that's what it is. It is very fresh on my mind because we had a representation from that area last night at TARZAP meeting. So I know that flooding is an area, is something which is a problem in that area. I can see officers' comments here, but not being an engineer or any kind of an expert on it. I just wanted to understand a little bit better what does this mean? How are they going to make sure that the gardens are not flooded and whatever, because it is a flood risk area. If you can, Shamal, please. You know, because I'm not an expert on it, and I think this is a problem that we are facing, and it is very, very, very fresh. That happened yesterday. We had a long presentation from somebody from that area, so I would like to understand that. Thank you.
Yeah, sure, Councillor. The drainage officer, the expert in that area, they have assessed the application and have asked for further details to be submitted. Those were secured by way of condition. They are 2 pre-commencement conditions, one for flood mitigation measures and the other for an emergency information. So that information would then need to be submitted by the applicant to be discharged before it can be occupied.
Okay, so you'll be following that up. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair. Well, thank you, Sham.
Christopher, you got a question?
Thank you, Chair. The off-street parking that's on the site at the moment, where it's 1 dwelling, when it's converted into 2 dwellings, will the off-street parking be the same or increased? Because my slight concern is there's a similar further up the village way, the same road or adjacent to it, there is a development where additional parking has then been put at the rear and the side, and then a boundary fence has been taken down once a dwelling of this nature has been subdivided into flats. And I think as a rule, that's quite detrimental to the nature or character of the area, rather.
Yes, Councillor. In this instance, along that western side, there's a sink that's located there, so that area would actually be protected. The biodiversity officer has actually commented on this and has stated that area, there wouldn't be any scope to develop on that area, so they wouldn't be able to put a parking space there.
Thank you. That's reassuring.
Thank you. Can we go on straight to vote now? Marlene, so are you going to vote a motion to refuse or?
No, Chair, as I already said, and please forgive me if I wasn't clear enough, as much as if I could find a sustainable reason, I would have. But in this instance, I'm satisfied that there isn't one, and therefore I'm not going to propose refusal. I did say so.
Thank you, Marlene.
Yes,
so let's go on to vote to grant application. I start with myself, Councillor Ghazanfali. I've read all the discussion and proceedings and a vote to grant the application. Thank you. Sachin?
Councillor Sachin Shah, I've heard all the discussions and I vote to grant.
Simon?
Councillor Simon Brown, I've heard all the discussions and I vote to grant.
Kieran?
Councillor Kieran Ramchandani, I've heard all the discussions and I vote to grant.
Anjana?
Councillor Anjana Patel, I've heard all the discussion and I vote to abstain.
Christopher?
Councillor Christopher Baxter, I've heard all the discussion and proceeding and I vote to abstain.
Marlene?
Yes, Chair, I've heard all the discussions and I vote to abstain. Thank you.
Thank you. So the application is granted, 4 in favour and 3 absentees. Thank you. And any other business? So there's no other application recommended for refusal, consultation from neighbouring authorities, nothing. Prior approval application, none. So any other urgent business? I don't think so, any. So
I think this has got
have a
to
good
be
evening.
the Peter's record for the shortest meeting, Chair.
Yes.
And I must say you chaired very well. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I think I'm getting used to it now.
Yes.
If Keith is going to be away, very
meeting.
busy. It's the shortest
Thank
meeting.
you,
I think
Chair.
we have three. Thank you.
did a
Have a
very
good
good job.
evening and See you soon. Take
care, everyone.
Bye bye. Bye bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye bye.